Feminine embodiment has saved my life. I was in the fast lane or towards burnout in 2019. I had been building my online business. I had achieved some success with it. But at one point, my body just said no. Welcome to Empower and Evolve, the vortex of growth that you have been looking for. I am your host, Kat Tannyberg. I'm a mindset coach for female leaders, and I am committed to helping you cultivate the mindset shifts that generate you wild success. Each episode, we explore ways to tap into your true potential. We face the shadows that hold you back, and we embrace the journey toward your most abundant life. If you love what you learn here today, then I invite you to share this episode with someone that needs to hear it. Right, it's time to plunge in. Hello, my love. Welcome to the first episode of 2025. I'm actually recording this on the 31st of December 2024. I'm really excited to get this podcast episode out there and introduce this new format of the Empower and Evolve podcast. I think I mentioned in the last episode how I would like to bring in themes for each month and kind of go deeper into these themes and then have a guest speaker to come and speak into these themes as well. So the theme of January is going to be feminine embodiment. And the reason why I chose this is because it's so deeply entrenched into all of my work and everything I do. It's a huge part of my differentiating factor and how I get my clients results. And it's about damn time that I actually record a podcast episode on it. I've mentioned it here and there, and I've mentioned like why I have found my way here. But I'm going to give you a quick little intro again today. There is an episode, I can't remember which number it was, where I talk about my defining moment. And that one actually very much speaks into feminine embodiment and kind of the beginning of this journey. Because for most of my life, I actually resonated with more of the masculine traits and, always striving for more, pushing for more. I have extremely high standards. I have very many placements in Capricorn in my birth chart. So that those high standards and discipline and structure on long-term goals is really something that is deeply engraved into me. And I was rebelling against wanting to just be someone's wife, someone's trophy wife, even though that was something that my mom always used to tell me, just marry a rich man and you'll be looked after. And I know she meant well, but I always had this thing of like, I'm going to become the rich man. And I believe through that programming early on in my life, which I created myself, I unconsciously started to resonate more with the masculine traits. And there is this whole freaking story of like, why that is the case and why so many women fall down into that trap. I like when this podcast was called the Connecting Back to You podcast, I actually recorded one of my first episodes on this, the downside of the women's liberation movement. And I recently re-listened to it because I shared it with someone and I was like, damn, it's a good episode. And it's very much true. And I believe that also really plays into it. So maybe I'll get Alexis to share them in the voice notes, in the show notes again, the two podcast episodes that I've referred to in case you wanted to dive a little bit deeper. Feminine embodiment has saved my life. I was in the fast lane of towards burnout. In 2019, I had been building my online business. I had achieved some success with it. But at one point, my body just said, no more. And I had a big health scare. And I go more into the story in my defining moment episode. But I ended up in the emergency room during a family holiday, and you got told that it might be potentially MS. And it was really in those moments that I realized that something needs to change, and I couldn't continue the way I was going. And I just had this intuitive download that it had to do with, needing to slow down and really embrace my unique energetic signature. And for those of you who are wondering, I still do not have the official diagnosis of MS, but I have lots of lesions in my brain, my spinal cord. But the good news is that they haven't really progressed from when I had the first MRI in 2020 to the MRI in 2024, which, MS is a neurological condition. It's an autoimmune condition that is deeply connected to the nervous system. And ever since I got that initial, scare that it might be MS, I really started to slow down and really learn to nurture my nervous system. So I'm not surprised that with all the work I've been doing for these last 4 years, it hasn't really progressed. Like, to me, it really just shows the power of this work, energetics and mindset and all of the above. So that's really exciting. And at the same time, that scare was one of the biggest gifts of my life, because it made me realize that something was no longer working and things needed to change. By the way, do you like my shirt? It's my uterus t-shirt from Earth Daughters. I figured I'd be wearing it for this episode. So yeah, that's my own story of how I found my way here. And it started, there's been so many different paths of this for me, whether that was human design, menstrual cycle coaching, mindset work, nervous system work, unconscious work. Like, they've all kind of led me down this route. And it's also for me a deeply spiritual practice of having learned to connect to my feminine. And even yesterday, I had my first ever Akashic record reading. And two of the past lives that we back into, one of them, I was a princess, and I just kind of realized my heritage and like my real past. And it was really, really powerful. And the other one was like about a witch. So the feminine work has actually been with me through lifetimes. And in one of them, I was a white witch helping other women heal. And at one point, there was this bind put on me, like a fire spell to remove my powers. So it's really fascinating to see the connection and how I have eventually found my way here. And I do truly believe that it is in our rock bottoms that we can find our true strengths and our true purpose, turning our pain into our purpose. So for me, that potential diagnosis was really that pivotal moment that has led me back to the path that I'm meant to be on. Because that's also when it all started, that I wanted to move away from network marketing and start doing my own thing. And it took a couple of years to kind of let that actually really manifest. But the pre-work started there. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. But let me give you a little bit more of, a description of what feminine embodiment is, because there's probably going to be at least one of you who's like, what the fuck is she on about? Feminine embodiment refers to the practice of fully inhabiting and expressing your feminine aspects and your feminine energy, whether that's through physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual dimensions of being. And feminine embodiment really involves embracing the qualities that are traditionally associated with the feminine, such as intuition, receptivity, nurturing, sensitivity, creativity. I believe also death and rebirth and destruction in order to be transformed, alchemy, spirituality, like all of these aspects and really integrating them into your daily life. Like, that is feminine embodiment. And if I was to go a little bit deeper, the key aspects of feminine embodiment I believe there's four, in my opinion. And the first one is physical awareness. So, starting to move your body in a way that is in alignment with the feminine. One of my favorite ways to do that is dance. And through some of my workshops that I've done, I often use dance as the way for women to really tap into their body. And, I normally start with a little bit of breath work so that they get really into their bodies. And then I really guide them to let the music move through their body instead of thinking about what movements they should do, like really allow the music to move through their body to guide them. And I'm no dancer, right? So, like, that's the first aspect. And then the second aspect, I always say, like, move through your hips because our hips is where our feminine power lies. So it's almost this like mindful movement through dance. Yoga also allows me to sometimes tap into this energy. And the other aspect of the physical awareness of the feminine embodiment is the heightened sensory experiences. So, really starting to bring more awareness to all of your senses: smell, touch, taste. Oh my God, what are the other ones? Hearing and seeing. And being really present with that full sensory experience and allowing yourself to witness the smallest details and experience pleasure through it. So the pleasure aspect comes into this physical awareness, and it's really allowing yourself to experience pleasure through all five of your senses. So it's not this, pleasure for the sexual pleasure's sake, but it's really pleasure in all aspects of life and allowing yourself to open yourself up to experience more of that. That's part of the physical awareness piece of the feminine embodiment. Then the second pillar here is emotional intelligence, which, if we think about our society, we're very much being taught that, being emotional is weakness. You shouldn't be so emotional, man up, big girls don't cry, like all these different ways. And even in my work, because, feminine embodiment, like I said, is so deeply rooted in everything I do, I see this so much when clients first come to me and I ask them about how they feel about certain things. I can see that they are thinking about how they should be feeling. So they're thinking their feelings instead of actually feeling their feelings. And this is something that they would have learned in childhood as a way to protect themselves and as a way to manage themselves. And back then it would have served them and protected them. But now it's actually causing more havoc. So allowing yourself to really experience your emotions and let them flow freely and express them in healthy ways is part of the emotional intelligence pillar of feminine embodiment. Because it really teaches you that all of your emotions are valid and that you are not your emotions. And sometimes we can't explain why we feel certain emotions, yet we feel them and there's no judgment. It's just witnessing your emotions with neutrality and recognizing that they pass. I have a really beautiful podcast episode on emotional intelligence. I'll get Alexis to link that one in the show notes too. And then with the emotional intelligence also comes the piece of compassion and learning to be both compassionate with yourself and your experience, as well as compassionate with others. Like that's another piece of the emotional intelligence pillar here. And then the third pillar is spiritual connection. So feminine embodiment really teaches you to connect to your intuition, to connect to nature, to connect to rituals, and to really turn the mundane into something magical. Like even this week, I was messaging my one-on-one clients and I was giving them some questions to reflect on, to think about, what they really gained from 2024. And I encourage some of them, because I know that they would really benefit from this practice, to actually make it a bit of a ritual. Make yourself some tea, play some music, maybe have some essential oils, and really take some time and dive into it. So this is one of the pillars of feminine embodiment, is actually that spiritual connection where we really take the time to bring rituals into everything we do. And, the piece of the connection to nature and the development of intuition, like that was kind of self-explanatory. And the final pillar of feminine embodiment is creative expression and learning to find different creative outlets to tap into expressing your inner thoughts and your emotions and allowing yourself to process what you're going through. And that could be things like writing and journaling. Oh my freaking God. Seriously, journaling is one of the most powerful things out there. And it's so underrated. And I was talking to someone about this recently. It's actually putting pen to paper. This is how one of the ways that you can access your unconscious mind. It's not about just, typing it into your laptop or your phone, like put pen to paper. Like actually let the thoughts flow out of your brain through the pen onto a piece of paper. Allow yourself to express what is going on. It's such a powerful tool for you to start to learn more, integrate more, and really open up aspects of yourself that you weren't even necessarily maybe aware of. Like reflective journaling is so powerful. I do it so much, like all of the time. And then there's, art. Like maybe there's some of you that are really artsy and, creating beautiful visual art can be something that you create. Also, music, it's another form of art. So, however you like to express and however you can tap into that creativity, that's beautiful. But taking time for creative expression is one of the key aspects, the key pillars to feminine embodiment. And I think it's so important that we start to learn to really tap into this power. And I feel like there's so many challenges to connect to the feminine because of how we've been brought up and, some of the stories and society in general. So first, I feel like there's just this really big misconception that in order to be strong, you have to be aggressive or like really forceful, which sometimes can be the case. But it's also about really learning to balance strength and softness. So learning to balance between assertiveness and embracing that more softer, nurturing quality within you. So the more we can actually start to recognize that there is strength and softness and that there is strength and vulnerability, the more we can actually start to allow ourselves to connect to our feminine. And then there's all these internalized beliefs, especially as women, I hear this all the time. We're the weaker sex. Being a woman is a curse. Our period sucks. This sucks. This sucks. Blah, blah, blah. Everything about being a woman is terrible. Like I hear it all the time. And it's a perfect example of how we have been programmed to think a certain way, to believe certain things that are not true. Like, yes, physically, we may not have the same strength as men, but do you recognize that without women, there wouldn't be any humankind? We are literally the portals of creation. And if you haven't listened to my podcast episode about the dark feminine, you fucking need to listen to it. Because the feminine is so powerful. And that's why we have been shunned. Because a woman that is connected to her power is unfreaking stoppable. And it's about damn time that we reclaim this. And of course, there's the struggle of not having many role models who would really show us what it looks like to embody the feminine energy in a healthy manner. I certainly can think of a lot of role models in my life who have got the juvenile aspects of the feminine nailed down, but they're truly embodied, not many. And there's so many women who I see just run their lives in that masculine. And that just isn't for me either. And okay, I want to actually talk into a little bit of a myth here that I find often is a bit of a prominent myth, as well as kind of tends to be a stepping stone in the journey of a lot of women to really kind of become their divine feminine. And that is that embracing feminine energy means that you have to reject the masculine energy. Or maybe start hating the masculine energy. Feminine embodiment is not about rejecting masculine traits, but it's rather about finding balance and integration, because both the masculine and the feminine energies have important roles to play in our lives. And feminine embodiment, in my opinion, is really about harmonizing these energies, which can lead to a more fulfilled and more balanced existence in general. And the divine feminine actually embodies both the feminine and the masculine and is able to move through these different experiences easily because we need both. One of my favorite sayings is discipline breeds freedom. Discipline being more of the masculine, freedom being more of the feminine. Without discipline, freedom, like it's just like me, just never get anything done, and we'll never like do anything, and then we'll just be sitting there, which can be great sometimes. I mean, I definitely like to sit and look at the wall sometimes. But it's actually being disciplined as well that allows you to create that true freedom so that you can, over a long period of time, spend your time, spend your money, do the things the way that you want to do them. You need discipline to get there. Like, you're not just going to magically appear there. So we need both the feminine and masculine. And if you're on this journey of feminine embodiment, it doesn't mean that you have to reject the masculine within you. It's just learning to recognize when to tap into what. Like, that's the power of this. And the final thing that I want to share with you today is just some really simple practices to start to connect more to the feminine and start to play around with that feminine embodiment. And before I share that, you definitely want to keep your eyes on my socials and my email list over the month of January, because I got something coming. It actually came to me in one of those feminine moments where I just had this intuitive download that I needed to just go and walk in silence, walk the dogs in silence, like not bring my headphones, not bring my phone, not anything, like no distractions, just me and the dogs and nature. And as I was out for this walk, it just like, suddenly just came to me what this was. Like, this was something I'd been thinking about and like wanting to manifest in a certain way for a while. And it wasn't coming to me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to let it be, because we need the void, we need the emptiness for things to drop in. And it was in that emptiness that it dropped in. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So keep your eyes on my socials. If this is some like feminine embodiment is something that you're curious about and you want to really experience it, watch out. There's something magical coming. But the final piece, some simple ways to tap into it that you can start utilizing today. The first one is creating morning rituals for yourself. And, you don't need a 3-hour, 2-hour, 1-hour morning ritual practice. It can literally be as simple as taking 5 deep breaths the very first thing when you wake up and ask yourself, what is one thing I need to do today to move closer to my goals? That could be your morning ritual. And that actually also connects to your intuition. And then if you start taking action on that for one thing, you also teach yourself that you can trust yourself, which builds inner trust, which is hugely beneficial in so many ways. That could be it. It could be gratitude journaling. It could be a meditation. It could be yoga. Like, your morning ritual gets to be whatever the fuck you want it to be. And my morning ritual is always changing. It always changes with the different phases of life that I'm in. But there always is something. Because it's really important for me to take that time to connect inward in the morning. Intuition, like I said, different practices to connect to your intuition. Asking yourself questions, noticing the answer, acting on it, noticing what happens when you do act on it, noticing what happens if you don't act on it, and if you do the polar opposite. Like, this is another simple practice to start to tap into your feminine embodiment, connecting to your intuition. Dancing. Just literally, like I said, just put on a song, take a few deep breaths, and then let the music guide you, let your hips guide you. Just see how you feel afterwards. And the final piece, journaling. I already spoke into this. The really simple things. Sometimes it's the simplest things that can make the biggest difference. That's all, my love. I'll catch you next week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on the Empower and Evolve podcast. I hope that today's episode has sparked a new insight, or perhaps reminded you of your own power to manifest change. If you found value in our time together, I invite you to subscribe and share this podcast with someone who might need a little reminder of their own magical power. It would mean the world to me if you could take just 2 minutes to review the podcast and help it reach more people. And remember, the journey of transformation is ongoing. And sometimes the most powerful step that we can take is to simply pause, breathe, and realign with our deepest intention. Until next time.